I'm going to introduce Kia. I've known Kia for 30 years. He is one of the most lovely human beings that I know. And he's now foolish enough to become a farmer and start a winery. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a background. So he and I worked together at a couple of startups. Both of them went public too.
Yep.
It wasn't a bad,
not too bad.
Not a bad deal.
Good run.
He went on to be a CTO at BMC Software, and then most recently a CTO at Splunk. So he comes with a very disruptive product technology mindset that he's now taking to the wine industry. So we were talking this morning. I wrote down an extra one. You mentioned something about how you, like at Splunk, you were looking at other industries, and you had an example of one of those industries that was struggling to sort of transform.
Yeah. So part of what was fun about the journey that we're all on is I feel like we had the front row seat to how technology changed business over the last 30 years. And Splunk was my first foray where we weren't just talking to the IT team about improving the digital infrastructure. We're talking to the business around how do they take data that comes from all the systems that they have and make better decisions in their day-to-day life. And I came across a lot of different industries that really kind of actually prompted me or gave me the inspiration to do the wine thing. Because I found that the leaders would look at data with foresight and look ahead for trends. And some of the more traditional companies look backwards at data and review it mostly for their QBRs and QSRs. The funnest experience was what is a leading indicator that somebody is going to have a child? And very large online retailer in one of the meetings said, well, it's diapers, because nobody searches for diapers unless they're planning on being a parent. And something that obvious, because nobody gifts diapers, right? If you think about children's goods, almost anything you search for, you could be going to a baby shower, and that's not a good enough signal. So what I learned was, how do you identify signals in your business and patterns and graphs that are become part of your competitive advantage? You become faster in recognizing these trends, not looking backwards, but looking forwards.
And he also had I'm gonna call out the other one, Nordstrom.
Yes.
Saying Nordstrom's like, hey, I've got all my demand forecasts, and
we know all our customers. That was the fit.
And so Kia's like, what about Nordstrom Rack?
Yeah, because you have basically a lot of inventory that's built up and overstock. So it's one of those challenges that I think a lot of is that, look, BMC was not the fast moving. And part of my job at BMC was go turn a mainframe company into a cloud company, right? So we had to kind of respect the past, but really focus on the future. And I think the different set of muscles get used when you have to kind of keep what's good going, but then build the next generation. That's why I've always been inspired by companies who can do that. But I always wished for a clean slate. And that's what
Neotempo. Clean slate. So my wife and I visited Kia on his winery up in Napa, and he told this lovely story about a bike ride that you went on. Was it? It had to have been.
Yeah, 95, 96. Yeah. I got a flat tire. I looked up. There was this amazing property with these 100-year-old oaks on a knoll on a vineyard, and I absolutely fell in love. And when I met my wife, I couldn't wait to show her, as we're driving, hey, one day that's going to be us. And when the property went on the market, somebody who knew called me up and said, your house, quote unquote, is on the market. And we started that journey. Again, we, like entrepreneurs, we just dove in. We're like, this is probably 10 years too early, which was perfect, because then I started learning more about farming and learning about the business without having to kind of have this pressure of it taking over our life.
Exactly. And so now you have this gorgeous winery that you've now launched. And
it's a vineyard. I would say vineyard because that's important as we talk about core versus context and how a digital native company thinks versus a traditional company. We have a vineyard that we live on. So our home is on a vineyard, just like traditional vineyards of 200 years ago when farmers lived actually on the land. And we created a brand called Neotempo, which is our wine brand. That's what externally people see. And the principal concept behind it was, how do we respect the past, but again, be forward leaning in terms of what the decisions we're making. And we wanted to kind of build an artisanal cult wine. Every decade or so, one of these comes along, and you can't declare yourself cult wine. You have to kind of do the right thing in terms of your wine being good enough, the story being good enough, the experience being good enough. It's all about experience now. And our secret sauce was precision. So I actually kind of like go right to the heart of, I'm an engineer at heart. I love the art and the science combo that is wine. And precision became, kind of a motto for us, from farming all the way to winemaking. And honestly, we had the privilege of being the first wine brand post pandemic, where a lot of people drank a lot of their good stuff that they had bought. And we made a bunch of decisions that, quite frankly, a lot of our other wine brands didn't have, which is, people don't want to buy wines and sit on it for 40 years for the next pandemic to enjoy it. So literally that went into the business plan, that's saying we want to balance this ageability versus drinkability. A lot of fine wine that you could buy anywhere in the world, usually the idea is you have to sit on them for 10 years, 20 years until they hit their peak. And we really challenged the engineering team to say, how do we use precision to make sure that the wines are balanced as it goes into the bottle? And that has significant economic value, obviously, for us.
So it's fascinating when you start with the what, like what Dr. Venkataraman was talking about. If you have an audacious what am I trying to achieve? It is interesting how it forces innovation, and it forces you to think fundamentally different. So talk about the sort of smart farming that you guys have
so
together.
Again, living with data over the last 20 years, operational data, I just questioned a bunch of things around farming, like what data do you use to make decisions? Found that it's data poor environment. Typically, a lot of it is intuition and gut. So first, I started with the best team you can possibly get of organic farmers. So Phil Katteri's on that slide. He is a legend. He practically invented organic farming dating back to 1970s, but he's a tech Luddite. So I told him, I'll be your CTO. What set of data do you use today, and how can we get you better data, faster data? And he said, well, I wish I could see every vine that was out there. I said, well, that's possible. I went to UC Davis, started working with the researchers, found my co-founder, Mason Earls, a professor. We created a company called Scout. Scout literally takes photos of every single vine, uses AI to identify disease and weakness versus strengths. The idea was so powerful that we actually spun it out of, because the wine brand is not a software company. So we spun that out, and Scout is now available for all the wineries in Napa Valley and beyond, and is being used by many of the top tier brands. But the advantage we have is we get really good data. And if you have good data, you can make really good decisions with the farming and the land that we have to maximize what we get.
I joke with him because we talk about, at Veeva, we talk about data in motion. He's doing growing in motion. He's got probes in the ground, probes in the vines. He's got pictures being taken. He knows exactly what grape clusters he's going to pick. He can actually project the production of a winery down to literally pounds.
Yeah, we were down actually talking about this event, and I told Ed there's a chance that I won't make it because of harvest. We just harvested last week, but I said, let me look at my dashboard, and the prediction was that we would harvest on October 4th. That was the prediction. This is 2 months ago. We harvest on October 2nd and October 9th, just to give you kind of the power of, and this is just using science and data, not intuition and gut. And I think this is why I'm so excited about kind of the opportunity. We have an amazing wine that I can produce year after year, despite climate change, despite climate chaos, because we've built a resilience toolkit that allows us to deal with anomalies that happen from year to year by measuring the product. This would be equivalent to you guys putting QA measures on every single product that comes off of the factory floor. We look at our vineyard as our factory.
The other thing I thought was funny, just as an old software salesperson, he would talk about vines as salespeople. If they don't produce enough, you rip them out and take the next one. Just saying, quotas, Greg.
Yeah.
But you didn't stop just at the smart farming. You also continued with your sort of like the original mindset and pulling it all the way through the business.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that if the wine wasn't good and it wasn't the highest quality, everything else we're doing would be viewed as a gimmick. Like they would like literally say, because most wine that's not in the traditional bottle, people question, is the wine any good? Is it too much marketing? But because we had a good core, because our digital core allowed us to make sure that the product is gonna, compete, then it gave us a freedom to be more innovative on the packaging and really question the packaging. Why are bottles round? That's very inefficient when you think about transport. The number one contributor to the footprint of the wine industry is the weight of the glass and the shipment. So we designed using a 3D printer and AutoCAD Fusion, which has AI capabilities in it. I designed a bottle. I've never designed a bottle before, and patented it. It's a hexagon bottle, so it fits much more tightly within a box, and it's much more durable and stronger. So there are videos of us dropping these things from 12 feet and not having them break. Then we started thinking about the experience. So great, we have a bottle, we have a box. Now I have to rely on UPS and FedEx to bring that experience to your home, because we want it to be a direct-to-consumer first business. As opposed to traditional, hey, I'm going to basically sell to a distributor a bunch of wine to sit on a pallet. That's an extremely inefficient use. So we started thinking about the packaging as an architecture. So we designed a box that works for 1 bottle to 3 bottles. We ended up with 3 bottles being the perfect size in terms of our Lego piece, if you will. So we can do 4 to create a case, but that 3-pack can actually be a 1-pack. So massive reduction in the number of SKUs and configurations on packaging that kind of drives sustainability and kind of reducing. And then we reduced the weight and the size. Our DTC cost shrunk quite a bit. Well, they were never that high because, again, we started digital first, so we didn't have a footprint to go with. But what we discovered through data was, even though people think that overnight shipping induces less stress on the wine, actually it's not. It's not true. It costs a lot more and it's not better for wine. And we did this with trackers and sensors. So we did A/B testing with a number of runs, and we actually loved those trackers so much, talking about the experiment that you take into production. This is data from the trackers we use to send the wine that you're going to enjoy here at the show. And we actually had a chat last week that UPS, instead of 1 day, ended up being 2 day. And I could track and monitor the package exactly where it was, what temperature it was, with monitoring all the way through. Now, if you were an end customer, you would have gotten a message from us, not from UPS and FedEx, telling you where your package is. So you don't have to wait at home for 8 hours or 4 hours because it requires signature. So we want to bring that Amazon experience of your driver's 9 stops away for wine, which is a huge differentiator. We had so many people say, please share this technology with all the other wine brands that I buy from, because this is the way the world's going. So it's another example of how data relates to both sustainable differentiation for us as a brand, but improves the end user experience, because we're putting the customer and the quality of the product above everything else.
So this is how you started. And I think when we go back to Dr. Venkataraman's slide where he has the industrial core and you're just sort of improving your status quo versus the digital core where you are improving the product, you're improving the packaging, like every facet of the business now elevates because you just fundamentally think different. So that's sort of a representation, like how, like when you entered the business, every new winery is on the left of the slide.
Yeah, so they put a lot of capital in buying land, buying a tasting room, basically kind of build a brick and mortar business and effectively outsourced a lot of the things that, quite frankly, now, people want to buy everything on a phone. They want to see, try, and they want to engage. We kind of designed a digital experience first and kind of put the product innovation in the context of the digital experience. And this is very important. So we have an analog experience, which you're going to see in a second, which is just the wine in a glass. I promise you, it will taste like wine. Hopefully you love it. But then we wanted to very intentionally create a digital experience that goes beyond that. And I'm very happy that we pulled this off. This has been 12 months more in research, and we wanted to kind of talk to people and say, how can we connect and nurture the customers and create a connection that's not transactional? So obviously what's table stakes is proof of origin and, organic certification and ingredients. Those are all good. If anything that the government forces you to do, that's table stakes. Like you're not going to differentiate on that. It's important. We wanted to make wine fun again. We wanted people to discover again. So what we've done is we wanted to tell our brand story, tell the label story. The label itself for our brand is very important because oftentimes that's what people kind of associate with the brand. We wanted to tell a digital version of this, provide the technical notes, but then go beyond that and offer music and art and recipes.
So
multi-sensory.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
So pull out your phones and hit the QR code.
Yeah.
And you get an idea of the kind of experience.
Yeah. So this label, by the way, we work with a company out of Hong Kong, Go ESG, that produced a label that is impossible to replicate because we have a lot of fraud and counterfeit challenges, particularly around uniqueness. So this label cannot be copied, etc. And the security that's within the label allows us to validate the product, but more importantly, be able to give the customers additional digital content that supplements the wine. And the plan here is to continue this with other digital experiences. So, for example, one of the chefs at the French Laundry who wrote the ad hoc cookbook with Thomas Keller, David Cruz, is working on a set of recipes that are designed for that vintage. And these are recipes that you can go to Whole Foods, spend less than an hour collecting 5 or 6 ingredients, and something that's elegant and different. And so we're looking on how do we help with the experiential aspect of the wine, knowing how busy everybody is. There's 15 playlists. So there's 10 playlists for al fresco, setting the mood. I'm going to enjoy the wine and al fresco. Here's a playlist that you have the most beautiful global kind of feel. There's a pairing playlist that's literally made for that bottle. There's the blending playlist. If you wanted to listen to what my winemaker and us listen to when we're making the wine, you can. So the idea is like just expanding the category so that you're competing on making an experience to the end customer, whether that's through the wine or through the broader experience. It's all about those moments that we can enjoy and repeat.
And the other thing you were talking about, at least when we were chatting, is that QR code, right? If I put the bottle of wine down for 5 years or 10 years and I then pull it out and I scan it, you have the ability to stay current.
Yeah, we're doing annual tastings with my winemaker so that you know where the wine is constantly. So that if you choose, and typically the best thing, by the way, the rule of threes, what we tell our clients is enjoy one soon, keep one,
check,
and enjoy it, let's say in 2-3 years to see how it develops. And then if you really like it, keep the last one for a very special occasion. And so the idea is like we're helping them figure out how in their busy lives this fits in. And again, you can enjoy it analog as any other wine, but the digital part gives us a little bit more of a connectivity.
So I'm not going to wrap up yet because we're going to ask some questions. So let's prepare some questions out there. there was another slide that I don't see on here, and it talked about your partners. And I know Chris Rowe, and Chris and I were talking and sort of preparing for the keynote panel tomorrow. Chris really emphasized the importance, as you're moving through this sort of shift, the importance of having a portfolio of partners.
Yep.
Portfolios that like take a portfolio approach.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me, if you go back to the temperature, that capability was it created
vaccines
for vaccines
during the pandemic. So I brought the trackers that I use were invented very much. The startup was around vaccines, and because during the pandemic you had vaccines that would expire, so it was designed for perishable goods. It had to fit a very small form factor. Work with that company, with the CEO, et cetera, saying, hey, how about the wine industry? So I'm usually customer one for a lot of these technologies in wine, which gives me the first mover advantage. I remember when I was in all of our startups, companies who bet on us got at least a year head start on all their competition. And that's another kind of advice that you have plenty of startups that want to work with you. And as long as you separate core from context, again, what's core for me, notice there was no slides on here's what flavor of wine we want to make. Our wine profile is very proprietary. It's our core. We think we can make wines that are great for the next 3 decades. I'm not going to go buy a glass company. So the design of our bottle is patented, but I have lots of different partners that manufacture the glass. So it's a little bit about thinking about how partners can help accelerate your innovation. And I am like a system integrator, like you were saying with Tesla. That's actually the best way to describe it. Basically, our wine is so it's soil to glass to cloud. That's literally how after today, thank you, Professor, that's the term that I'm going to use, because it's really what you're experiencing in that bottle came from a piece of dirt when we bought that house 14 years ago. Literally nothing was planted. So it was dirt that then became plants, that then the grapes became wine, and the wine went into the bottle that we designed. And now the QR code leads you to kind of our digital experience.
And also the other thing that struck me in your story is, we are intentional about the what, and the what then kind of explodes our thinking and our approach and might do something different. But then there's something about the journey that you go on, and things reveal themselves that are unanticipated.
100%.
And you talked about like pesticides.
Yeah. So we were living on the property. So organic was the only option. Like, I'm not going to poison myself with the drinking water just to save a buck. But then you realize what are the challenges with organic farming. One of them is that, pesticides is a new Kamal strategy. Organic farming means you have to manage each vine separately. And you have to, because it could capture a bug or a virus, and you have to make sure it doesn't spread, which again helped with the Scout idea of like, I needed Scout in order to basically, pull this off. In a 100% organic farm. Now, as I did Scout, and I'm like, hang on a second, I can use this data on vineyards I don't own. So now the expansion strategy is I take the control plane and the data quality that I have, and in fact, I'm buying grapes from other farms as long as they go through the same protocol. So it's like, we like to say discovery leads to innovation, leads to discovery leads to knowledge leads to intelligence, right? That's the format that we've been following. So a lot of these things, as we're doing it and we're looking at the data, the aha moments are, well, hang on a second, if we can do this, what stops us from doing the next one and the next one and the next one?
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about your strategy is you're not targeting my demographics. So
yeah, so I told Ed this, and Ed and I go back, and I always have respected him so much because he's very open and very transparent, and I've learned a lot from that. So I literally just directly said, Ed, I love the fact that you and Darcy enjoy our wine, but being a new brand and wanting to be around for 30 years, we have to market to 30 something. So could you bring your kids over?
Can I need some whiskey? Hey, Don, can we get some whiskey in here? Get this wine out of here.
So It is, that's another kind of aspect of innovation. We, like, all the studies show that sustainability is so important to, it's a level one decision. So we're doing sustainability because we care about the planet. Tracy and I do, and we're on the front lines, living on a farm that there's been 2 fires in the last 4 or 5 years. It's important for the bottom line. It actually forces you to create a better product. You see our bottle, as people in the industry looked at it, and this is one of the great things about my job, is that I get to work with some amazing legends that have been in the wine industry for the last 30 years. So Carlo Mondavi, Robert Mondavi's grandson, co-founded Monarch Tractor, which is an electric tractor that we use exclusively. In fact, we now have 2 years where we've been emissions free. And he is driven very much by the legacy of his grandfather and the planet that and the nature that we have, and trying to preserve it. So I see technology as a massive, massive help on that front. And he said, well, I took care of the electric tractor. You're now doing the bottle. We share, by the way, the design of the bottle to people who are interested. So it's this innovation can really kind of fuel change, not just within your company, but across your sector and across your industries.
So, farmer, wine owner, technologist, and just a lovely, lovely human being. We're going to taste some of his wines, and he's doing it at scale. There's no excuse for the companies in this room not to make the same impact. You have so much more resources than what he has. You have so much more to lose if you don't make the shift. So we need to do this collectively and make that shift.